We can hear now Professor Sørensen, who is the former head of the Economic Council of Denmark, the wise man of Denmark.
Yes, thank you. I think my presentation will be very good after yours because I appreciate many of the points you did. I will mostly take a review of the Angelides Report, which is also called the Financial Crisis Inquiry Report. It was a Congressional report made by 10 members, 6 Democrats and 4 Republicans. It's on more than 600 pages and more than 6,000 footnotes. So it contains a lot of information which I think is very good to have in mind when we are discussing what next. I have in fact wrote 60 pages of it, so at least myself I will claim that I knew quite a lot about it. It's a report a little special because it's mostly based on interviews and not as much as statistical data analysis as maybe one should suppose. And it's also very important to notice that it only described how the crisis developed. There's no exactly suggestion what you should do next. But of course, if you read the report, it's very difficult not to get some impression of what to do. And that's good. My analysis from this report, I think it's fair to say that is from a traditional point of view of an economist, even though I have a critical point of view on the financial sector, I will say, as we already have heard. I think you can learn a lot from this report. One of the things is that you should always pursue a decent public policy, and you cannot get public services unless you are ready to pay for them. And I think that's very important. That is a reality in the US, and it's been especially a reality in Greece. But I will not hint on this now because I will specialize on this Angelides report. And furthermore, I will only take 2 things up, especially the work or the failures, in fact, of the credit rating agencies, which we have already heard about, and also the failures of the financial supervision institution. I think it's very important to speculate why it went so big failures. There's, as we already heard, there's in the world there's 3 important credit rating bureaus: Moody's, Standard & Poor, and Fitch. And in the Angelides report, Moody's has been chosen to represent those, but they claim that it is a representative again for the 2 others too. And I will quote from what they find about the work of the credit rating bureau. And I quote now: "We conclude the failure of credit rating agencies were essential cogs in the wheel of financial destruction. The 3 credit rating agencies were key enablers of the financial meltdown. The mortgage-related securities at the heart of the crisis could not have been marketed and sold without the seal of approval, of their seal of approval. Investors relied on them, often blindly. In some cases, they were obligated to use them, or regularly capital standards were hinged upon them. This crisis could not have happened without the rating agencies. The ratings helped the market soar, and then downgrades to 2007 and 2008 wreaked havoc across markets and firms. That's what they conclude in the Angelides Report. And there was two key words which they used to market those toxic papers or securities. They were mostly based on subprime mortgages or Alt-A mortgages. And they collected a lot of them in an entity. And the thing they made them, on the basis of them, they made 20 different residential mortgage-based securities. If you had priority one, you get the right to get all the money, your money. And if only number one get the money, they will go further to number two. What Moody's and the other did was, even though they were subprime mortgages, they could, by this process, turn it around. So 80% of the nomination got the AAA rating from the bureaus. How did they make that? Insane thing. They made it using very complicated models. We knew, and those who should supervise those models, they didn't understand it. But we already know in Denmark that people don't like to say, I don't understand. We know from Hans Christian Andersen, the emperor with his new clothes. That is who's your child who say he has no clothes. And the way they did it was two things. They simulated quite a number of scenarios. On average, in those scenarios, they assumed that house prices was increasing 4% a year. And then this was the first very essential assumption. The second very essential assumption was that they say if one go down, it will not have implication for others. But everybody can see if the house prices go down. It's not only one in a house who are hidden, it's all. And that was the reason why I nearly say it was a criminal act, the way it was done. And therefore, in my opinion, as it can follow on your presentation, I think it can be very essential to introduce a Glass-Steagall, but we also need to take a much broader view what's get wrong, and that's, I think, the Angelides Report is very important. And as we already heard, former the credit rating bureaus was not listed companies. In fact, that happened in 2000. And after 2000, they completely changed behavior. And I again quote from the Angelides Report, many former employees said after the public listing in 2000, Moody's, the company culture changed. It went from a culture resembling a university academic department to one which values revenue at all costs. The former managing director, Jerome Fons, who was responsible for sampling an internal history of Moody's, agreed the main problem was that the firm became so focused, particularly the structured area, on revenues, on market shares, that they willingly looked the other way, trading the firm reputation for short-term profit. And it is further elaborated by people in Moody's in the report, by those you can read from the report. And I will quote one more because I think that is very interesting. And it's Kimball, which was Chief Credit Officer at Moody's. He said, Italy competition would be primarily on the basis of rating quality, with a second component of price and a third component of service. Unfortunately, of the three competitive factors, rating quality is proving the least powerful, given the long tail in measuring performance. The real problem is not that the market does underweight ratings quality, but rather that in some sectors it actually penalizes quality by awarding rating mandates based on the lowest credit enhancement needed for the highest rating. Unchecked, competition on this basis can place the entire financial system at risk. It turns out that ratings quality has surprisingly few friends. Issuers want high ratings, investors don't want rating downgrades, and bankers game the rating agencies for a few extra basic points on execution. And that is, we have to learn a lesson from this, because the problem was they were make a listed company, and you can, if they are depending on profit, and if your business are depending on that you give good ratings, then we knew that you have moral hazard. In economy, we also have another word for this, and it's called Gresham's law, because Gresham's law expressed that the bad thing, they extinct the good thing. It was from the bimetallism, where we have both silver and gold, and Gresham in London, many years ago, he taught that lesson. And that is a very basic thing you have to notice, that bad thing can extinct good things. And therefore I think it's very essential to change, give new, maybe put the rating agencies under supervision or direct authority of the central bank, because it's at least the central banks which have to clean up the mess afterwards. So there should be very strong reaction against that, and I think the Angelides report tells us very clearly. So I think what I say here is more or less in accordance with your presentation. At least that's my interpretation. The second thing is, why did the regulators also make very big mistakes? And I will again quote from the report, from the Angelides report. We conclude widespread failures in financial regulation and supervision, proving devastating to the stability of the nation's financial market. The centuries were not at their post, in no small part due to the widely accepted faith in the self-correcting nature of the markets and the ability of financial institutions to effectively police themselves. More than 30 years of deregulation and reliance on self-regulation by financial institutions, championed by former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan and others, supported by successive administration and Congress, and actually pushed by the powerful financial industry at every turn, has stripped away key safeguards which could have helped avoid catastrophe. This approach had opened up gaps in oversight of critical areas with trillions of dollars at risk, such as shadow banking system and over-the-counter derivatives market. In addition, the government permitted financial firms to pick their preferred regulators in what became a race to the weakest supervisor, Gresham's law. Yet, we do not accept the view that regulators lacked the power to protect the financial system. They had ample power in many areas, and they choose not to use it. Too often, they lack the policy at will. In a political and ideological environment that constrained it, as well as the fortitude to critically challenge the institution and the entire system they were entrusted to oversee. That's very tough words, I should suppose. Here, I think we also can learn a system. I shall suggest two things. One of the big failures in the state was that there's so many regulatory entities. So nobody has really the responsibility for doing it well. It's not my problem, it's the others' problems. And they have not only many regulatory institutions on one level, but they also have institutions on federal level and on the state level. And they changed the law in such a way that financial firm could choose a regulator. And as they have to pay for the regulators, those who offer the lowest cost, they choose them. And therefore, it's very dangerous to let the financial firms choose their own regulators. They should pay for it into a common fund, and then the society impose a regulation upon it. That is very, very interesting. And so they must pay it directly itself. The third thing I think is that when you come to big financial firms which make a lot of money, and the CEO make as much money as you never can dream of making a whole life, you are very impressed by them. People are normally, and then they suggest you should not take that attitude. Be more self-trusting to criticize. I think that is very important. I have taken those 2 points up here. I think there's a lot of sources you can learn about in the Angelides Report of how many money they used in lobbying, etc., etc. How silly they were. It's incredible how great bonus they awarded to themselves. You get nearly sick to read it, but it's the question. So I will do stop my presentation here. We are a little back, but I think you can learn a lot from the Angelides Report. How we come out, and the problem is, as you also stressed, how little there has been done afterwards. How little restriction which has been put on the financial sector since the biggest crisis, at least since the 1930s and maybe even before. So that is really astonishing that nothing more has been done. And in fact, we have a bigger task to do, because due to the financial crisis, the biggest firm is growing ever bigger, because some of them was risk to go bust. They were bought of others, maybe they were forced to it. At least 2 of the investment bank has been bought by commercial bank, and 1 get bust. That was Lehman Brothers. That's another question. But I think we have a very big task there. And in our own country, Denmark, I have asked for a financial committee to investigate what happened. It's quite amazing that we not even dare to investigate what happened in Denmark. Could we not learn anything about it? Our leading political leaders seem to seem, apparently no. That's rather astonishing after so big failure which has been done. I will thank you for your listening to me, and thank you.